Can everyone hear me? Is this thing on? No?
There are microphones that
Yeah. Yeah. So, I mean, can everybody hear me? Okay.
Now we can.
Okay, great. My name is James Slattery. I'm with the Texas Civil Rights Project. I just want to thank you all for coming today on this important day for voting rights here in Texas. You're going to hear now from a number of people who will talk to you about Senate Bill 9, a dangerous new anti-voter bill that passed the Texas Senate in April last month and is being heard in a hearing today in the House Elections Committee. They're going to tell you about the disastrous effects this bill will have on their right to vote, on their right to have their voices heard in our democratic process. Before I do so, there is one bit of pending business. The committee is hearing the bill today. Several hundred people have already signed up to testify, but registration for the hearing for testimony was closed at 8:30 today, and there are still several hundred people who traveled from across this state to have their voice heard in that hearing room, and we respectfully request that their right to be heard be respected by that registration for testimony to be reopened, which is within the power of the committee and is currently pending for decision before the committee. With that, I want to introduce our very first speaker today. His name is Alex Burnell from Move Texas. He is my friend and my colleague, and I am grateful to hear his powerful testimony today. Thank you.
As James said, we're all here today because SB 9 is asinine. My name is Alex Burnell. I'm the advocacy manager at Move Texas. Move Texas is a nonpartisan, nonprofit grassroots organization dedicated to building youth power in underrepresented youth communities through leadership development, issue advocacy, and voter registration. And we're here today to talk to you all about SB 9. As SB 9 is being heard in the committee, we're already hearing there's rampant problems with the bill that so many organizations, our organization, and our allies here today are letting everybody know is problematic. First, the bill criminalizes significant portions of the voter registration process, upgrading errors made on the voter registration card to a state felony. We're concerned that this will have a disparate impact on the communities that Move works with. Move works with everyday people who are oftentimes first-time voters, who complain to us in earnest and in good faith that the process is already too complicated. SB 9 takes that confusion, that labyrinthian system, and heightens it to criminality, making those earnest errors potentially something that could permanently damage people's records should they be prosecuted. Additionally, there's a risk of discriminatory impact. If you're somebody who is Latinx or Hispanic and you have a lengthy name on your driver's license, but then you fill out a voter registration card using your casual and everyday name, the bill defines wrongful reporting of information as having knowingly done so, but doesn't really well define that standard. And so we're left in a position where we think this bill might have discriminatory impact on Hispanic and Latinx populations because of that discrepancy. Additionally, with transgender individuals who might have made the transition in their private lives, but haven't yet done the legal paperwork to make sure that their legal documentation matches their private, personal identity. We don't know whether or not that constitutes knowingly violating the law. And so you're going to see disparate impacts in application of SB 9. Populations that Move works with, right? People that are regularly shuffled from the system. Primarily, we're standing here today because SB 9 stands contrary to the very spirit of our organization. As I said in the opening, we organize young people. We take first-time voters and people that have been historically disenfranchised and get them involved in the process. SB 9 is a signal to do the opposite. It says, hey, if you're interested in this system, it's a system that could potentially criminalize you. You know, it's a system that you have to be surveilled in because, you know, errors and corruption are regularly accused in our voting process. Fraudulence is regularly accused. As a disabled voter, myself, who stands to be impacted by the provisions in SB 9, it's not only an offense to me as an organizer for voting rights at a voting rights organization, but it's an offense to me personally as a disabled voter that somebody who is trying to assist me might have to fill out paperwork verifying that they're not going to be one of the people who's buying or selling my vote, as the senator who authored this bill is accusing folks of doing. So, in conclusion, it's very important that we recognize the power of everybody standing here today. All these youth organizations, all these allied organizations, hundreds of people who've driven all across Texas to stand up for voting rights. The discussion we need to be having is about voter turnout. We need to talk about modernizing our system, automatic voter registration, same-day voter registration, online voter registration. We need more campus polling locations. We need student ID as voter ID. Senate Bill 9 heads in the opposite direction. It uses arcane solutions that are based in crime and punishment, that are based in deterrence, as a form of correcting for what they think is a phenomenon in our voting system, which is fraudulence. We think that the opposite is true, that turnout is the issue, and that there's modern solutions to improve turnout. So I just want to say again, like James did, there are thousands of people that want to speak to that issue today, and so the committee should reopen for testimony so that these people have a chance to speak. Because in conclusion, again, SB 9 is asinine. Thank you. I'd like to open up the floor for Sam Robles with Progress Texas.
Good morning. We're going to try to see if we can get the mic set up. We're going to project as loud as we can. Let me tell you a little bit about the coalition standing behind us today, who are part of standing up against SB 9. These are groups that register people to vote. They focus on registering young people to vote. Our coalition is made up of organizations that fight for, are led by people with disabilities, and making sure that they have access to quality health care to how they're going to access the ballot box. We also have people in our coalition who represent longtime voters, like the League of Women Voters, who membership goes beyond Texas, representing women from all range of the political spectrum. We have folks, a majority of this coalition are also organizations that stood up against the nomination of David Whitley to make sure that we did not allow elected officials to purge and to remove us from the voter rolls. We also have organizations that for decades have been a part of fighting in the courts for Texans to protect their right to vote. Thank you. And we also have worker rights organizations and labor unions who are part of making sure that every working person has a right and has a say in how Texas is built. And we are all in our communities year-round. And each of us fundamentally believes that our lawmakers should be doing everything possible to make voting accessible to Texas voters. And as you can see by the petitions that we have gathered up to this point, thousands of Texans agree with us, and thousands are asking their lawmakers to stand up and to stop Senate Bill 9. Senate Bill 9 seeks to slow down the vote and slow down the real, organic, and powerful grassroots movement that is happening in this state. And last year, we saw dynamics change in Texas. And this is not an anomaly. We have more voters like Alex, like Rick, who you're going to hear from soon, like Raven. Our voters in Texas are becoming younger, they're people of color, and they're coming out to vote. And those who have banked on restricting voting rights for marginalized people are nervous. And we've seen it throughout session, and I know you all have been covering it. We can tell that this session's a little bit different. And we see it today too, on how they want to keep our voices from being heard when they stopped registration for this bill. We collectively are on the doorsteps of changing the power dynamics of this state. In anti-voter legislation like Senate Bill 9 is a tool designed to keep those with power in power and to keep us out of the voting line. And we know that these policies have real impacts. We know that Texas has a long-standing history of suppressing and keeping people from the ballot box. We see it with the ways that they have taken out the most important parts of the Voting Rights Act. We see it with what happened just earlier this year. And similar tactics have been played over and over and over across this country. And our state legislature must do better. And every day, more Texans are standing up against anti-voter legislation like Senate Bill 9. We're going to keep on bringing more boxes and more signatures, and we're going to fill up the Capitol. We're going to ask the House Elections Committee to stop this bill, and we're going to stay here for as long as it takes. And you're going to keep on hearing from folks today who have been in the process, whether they have been stopped from being able to vote or new young people that are looking to vote and are energized. So from that, I'm going to hand it over to Rick Galvan with the Texas Freedom Network.
Hi everyone, how y'all doing? Y'all ready to defeat SB 9? I knew we had a good coalition here. I knew we had great people with us. My name is Rick Galvan. I am the president of Texas Rising chapter at the University of Texas at Austin. Texas Rising, sponsored by the Texas Freedom Network, brings together young, diverse, politically engaged Texans under 30 to build a grassroots movement through community organizing, public policy, and voter registration and voter turnout efforts. With a presence on more than 20 college and university campuses across the state, we have registered tens of thousands of potential new voters under the age of 30, many of them Texans of color. Through texting, phone banking, and good old-fashioned block walking, we have worked to turn out these voters to the polls. We do this because the freedom to vote and have our voices heard is fundamental to our democracy. It's the most basic building block of our political system. The legislator would like to make it easy, or should make it easier for eligible Texans to register and cast a ballot, but instead, bills like SB 9 would make it harder. And the legislature should also make it easier for people to testify against this bill, but apparently they don't want to do that either. Its provisions, SB 9's provisions, are designed to scare eligible voters with potentially enormous fines and years in jail for making a simple mistake, like an error in voter registration form, or mistakenly try to vote in a wrong precinct. In addition, by giving law enforcement immunity from prosecution for election-related crimes, this bill opens the door to official harassment of groups like Texas Rising, Move Texas, and many other groups like us. We do a whole bunch of work to increase voter turnout among underrepresented communities, and it looks like the Texas legislature doesn't want to hear that, or see that happen. These concerns are not imaginary. Just this year, we all saw the Texas Secretary of State try to purge tens of thousands of voters, many of them Texans of color like myself, from the rolls through bogus claims about voter fraud. Frankly, this bill looks like yet another effort by those in power to stay in power by keeping new voters, especially young Texans of color, from going to the polls. Instead of trying to suppress the vote, legislators should be passing laws to make participating in our democracy easier for eligible voters, like online voter registration or on-campus voting locations. That's the way our state should be moving, forward, not backward. I would like to end with a quick quote that's really close to my heart. It's literally close to my heart because it's on this pen. It's by President Johnson when he was signing the Voting Rights Act of 1965. The right to vote freely must never be obstructed. Thank you. I would like to introduce Montserrat Garibay from the AFL-CIO.
Buenos días. Estoy aquí representando al Texas AFL-CIO. Mi nombre es Montserrat Garibay. Soy la secretaria tesorera con la Federación de Texas AFL. La AFL de Texas se opone a la SB 9. Este proyecto de ley ataca a los ciudadanos estadounidenses de nuestro país, especialmente del estado de Texas. SB 9 quiere suprimir a los votantes ancianos y discapacitados que muchas veces no pueden conducir a las urnas. Amigos y familiares y organizaciones hacen un esfuerzo muy grande para llevarlos a las urnas porque todos nosotros creemos en la democracia y creemos en la importancia y en el derecho de votar y la participación ciudadana. Todos los proyectos de ley que ampliarían la votación no han ido a ninguna parte en esta sesión legislativa. En su lugar, seguimos escuchando sobre el fraude electoral. Permítanme ser claros. No hay fraude electoral en Texas. No hay fraude electoral en Texas. Lo que tenemos es supresión para votar. Está claro que hay un movimiento para suprimir nuestros derechos de voto, especialmente aquí en Texas. El secretario de Estado, David Whitley, ya trató de suprimir nuestro voto de los ciudadanos estadounidenses naturalizados hace algunos meses. Texas suprime el voto de las personas que no hablan inglés, a quienes se les niega el acceso a traductores. El Texas AFL-CIO se mantiene fuerte con nuestros aliados y la comunidad para asegurar que la votación sea accesible para todos los ciudadanos elegibles para votar aquí en Texas. Good morning. My name is Montserrat Garibay and I am the Secretary Treasurer of the Texas AFL-CIO. I am here to represent the different federations that are affiliated with us. The Texas AFL-CIO opposes to SB 9. This bill is a blunt attack to the American citizens across our state. SB 9 wants to suppress the elderly and the disabled voters that oftentimes can't drive to the polls. Friends, family members, and organizations make an effort to assist them to take them to the polls because we all believe in democracy. We believe in the importance of the right to vote and civic participation. All the bills that would expand voting have gone nowhere in this legislative session. Instead, we keep hearing about voter fraud. Let me be clear. There is no voter fraud in Texas. Again, let me be clear. There is no voter fraud in Texas. What we have in the 21st century in Texas is voter suppression. It is clear that there is a movement of voter suppression because people are scared of the fact that Texas is changing. The Secretary of State, David Whitley, already tried to suppress the vote of naturalized American citizens just a few months ago. I became a citizen 5 years ago, and I was scared that my name was going to be in that list. But we were lucky that the judges said that he needed to take away that those letters that were sent to naturalized American citizens. Texas suppressed the vote of non-English speaking people who are denied access to translators when they go and vote for the very first time. Labor stands strong with allies and the community to make sure that voting is accessible to all U.S. citizens that are eligible to vote. What do we want? We want to defend, we want to oppose SB 9. What do we want?
Oppose SB 9.
What do we want?
Oppose SB 9.
What do we want?
Oppose SB 9.
Thank you very much.
As you all have heard today, SB 9 would make voting harder, scarier, and more confusing for voters, while at the same time imposing new red tape and unnecessary bureaucracy on our county elections officials. Beyond the abstract rights we've talked about, it's also about people. And I want to tell you about a person named Crystal Mason in Fort Worth, one of our fellow Texans who went to go vote in 2016. She's a woman of color and she thought she was eligible to vote, but she was mistaken. And for that mistake, this state prosecuted her and sentenced her to jail for 5 years. Under SB 9, it would change the intent requirement so that way you could go to jail even if you didn't know that what you were doing was a crime. It would create many, many more Crystal Masons in this state. And that is exactly the wrong direction. We should be modernizing our election systems to empower more of our voters to participate, like enacting online voter registration, which, if we are serious about securing our elections, is the most important thing this state could do right now to secure our election systems. And this committee will hear more testimony on exactly those points if it reopens testimony instead of closing it like it did at 8:30 this morning. And so we once again respectfully request that the committee reopen registration so that way all Texans who want their voices heard can be heard today. And then we respectfully request that this committee vote down SB 9 and turn to better, more effective laws that would empower voters, not scare them away from the ballot box. Thank you very much.
being here. We're going to have some folks available to take questions. All of you, there's lunch available at the FAL-CIO.